Hello and welcome back to this tutorial on creating a simple PHP strategy game. In this part of the tutorial we will begin to create messages which allow players to talk to each other through sending messages. These will be private messages. In later tutorials we will get into actual chat systems where players can talk to each other publicly. So in this part, what we want to do first is look at the stats page. So if we go over to our account-1 user, we want to be able to have a link that we can click on so that we can send them a message. So what we will do is we will go here to our stats.php page, and right under here where we echo out their username, which you can see right here, we will add in a couple more break lines. Right under here we will add in 2 break lines, and then we will add in an anchor tag which will have the href location or the link location to send_pm.php. Then we also have to add in the user ID, so we actually have the ID that we can send the message to. So if we add ID equals, and we add the PHP tags, and we say echo ID semicolon and then ending tags, this will now say send_pm.php question mark ID equals whatever their user ID is. And then for actually we will say we can leave that as PM. So if we add in send PM, this is what the text will be displayed as. So if we go back to this page and refresh, we now have our send PM link right there on their page. So if we click on that, obviously the URL is not found because we haven't made the page yet. However, we can see that ID equals 2 is right here. So we have the ID that we can work with. This is the ID of the user that we will be sending a message to. So let me just go back there for now. So what we will have to do is in our game folder, we will create a new file and we will call this send_pm.php. And if we double click this, we just have an empty page. So what we will do is we will go to our test.php page, which I've created just as a little sandbox page. It just has the header and footer includes as well as the session start. So this is just a blank page. So if we select all of that, copy and paste it, and save it into send_pm.php, we can go back to our browser, click on this link, and now we have a blank page for send PM. And as we can still see, ID equals 2. So what we will do first is we will go back here and we will say ID is equal to the protect function of $_get_ID. So we're using the get ID that comes with the URL, which will be the user that we're sending it to. So what we will do first is check to see if actually we will get rid of this. We can actually just go right into a query looking for the username that we're trying to find. So what we will do is we will say get user is equal to MySQL query or die MySQL error. This will just add in some protection. I don't remember if we have that. Let's see. Save.php does have or die MySQL error. So that way, if there's an error for whatever we're doing, then that issue will pop up and we can deal with it then. So for this MySQL query, first we'll add our double quotes and we will say select tilde, which is in US keyboards the key next to 1. It's not necessary to have the tilde symbol, but it does make things look nicer. So if we say select tilde username tilde from user where ID is equal to, now we have two single quotes here, and then we say ID. So this is the query to select the username and also just to try and be sure that the user exists. So what we can say now is if MySQL numRows of getUser is equal to 0, then we can output a message saying invalid user ID. So if this query here returns 0 rows, it means that the user doesn't exist, so we've been given an invalid ID. So what we can do right now is, if we refresh this page, 2 is a valid ID. If we just go to sendpm.php, we hit enter. As you can see here, there's an undefined index ID because ID doesn't actually exist, and therefore there's an invalid user ID. So we want to get rid of this notice here by saying here, what we can do is we can say is set underscore get ID. So here is the checking. If it exists, then we use protect 0. Hopefully this will work. Okay, so here we're checking if the ID exists, then we will take whatever we have for it. If it doesn't exist, we will just default it to 0. So if we go back here, we refresh the page, the notice is gone. So since there's no ID in the URL, we're taking the ID to be 0. And since no user exists with the ID of 0, then it's an invalid user ID. Likewise, we can say ID is equal to ABC. Obviously, ABC is not a valid user ID, so we spit out the same message. If we go back to our default ID of 2, that's a valid user ID. It exists in the database, so we can use it. And what we will do is we will also include footer.php in here and throw the exit function. So this way, if we have an invalid user ID, it will set out the output message and then include the bottom half of the page and then exit the page completely. Meaning anything after this, all this here, will not happen. This is just so we can have a check and end the page gracefully if we need to. So now what we can do is we can say if is set, and we add more colons or parentheses, $_post submit, and here we can add our curly brackets, and then we add the else block here. So right here we're checking to see if the submit button has been posted, then we can go on with handling the message form. Otherwise, in this else block, this is where we will have our form so we can actually type things in. For that, first we will add pm_user is equal to MySQL fetch associative, whatever, of the getUser variable, the query that we did previously in the page up here. So what this we can do is we can say pm_user variable, and then we can say username, and this is the same as the username of the user we're trying to actually message. So right here I will actually add in the closing and opening PHP tags here so that we can create the form. So if we say form action, we say send underscore pm.php, and the method of post, we have our form now. So now what we have to do is we'll create the form that has to say who we're sending it to, and then it'll also have a subject field and a message field. So what we can do is we can say to : space, and then if we add in PHP tags, we say echo $PM underscore user brackets and then username. So if we echo out the username that we got from this database query, and then we add in a break line. On the next line, we can say subject, and we will add in an input type of text with the name of subject. So when we submit the post data, the post subject will be whatever we typed into the field. And then finally we have, well, not finally yet, we have a text area with the name of message, and this will just be whatever our message is going to be. We will add break lines at the end of each of these so the form looks a little bit nicer, even though we're not dealing with a whole lot of CSS. So last but not least, we have to add in the submit button, name submit, and then the value will be send. So now we have this form, and we can go back to our page here, and as you can see, we've gotten the username that we're trying to send to, and then we have the subject field, the message field, and the submit button. If I were to hit send, it will say invalid user ID because that's something that we have to worry about. Here, actually what we will do is we will actually take all of this and bring it into here. And we can just tab this out to make it look a little bit nicer. So now what will happen is, if the form is not submitted, we will check for their ID and then post the actual form. But if we do hit submit, which we can go back to here, if we do hit submit, now we have a blank field. Why is this? Sorry about that, my microphone decided it wanted to stop working. So, as I was saying, why do we have a blank page here? This is because if we go back to here, we've submitted the post data, so everything that happens is now in this area. So first we can go back to this page right here, where we have the account 1, the subject, and the message. One thing we have to add in is a hidden input field. Type is equal to hidden. Name will be user. Actually, we can call this PM underscore user. And the value will be, we add our PHP tags and we say echo ID. So now this hidden field is named PM user, and it has the ID of the user we're trying to message. So now what we can do here is use the, hold on, let me just see. Okay, we're doing it that way. Alright, so we will have PM underscore user is equal to protect post and then PM user. So even though this is a hidden field and it has a default value, we want to protect it anyways just to keep our site safe. So now if we add in, we can say PM subject is equal to protect underscore post, and then PM, or this is actually subject, sorry. And then if we add in PM underscore message, this will be equal to protect the post form of message. So now we have these variables, and we can begin to check about the validity of these things. So first what we will do is we will check to see if the PM message is equal to nothing. If it is, we want to output you must supply a message. If they left the message field blank, obviously they don't want to send a message, so we're going to try and tell them that. Now, the subject we can leave empty because we can just set it to a default of no subject. So then we can just kind of ignore that until the end. However, what we will do is now we will check for the lengths of both the subject and the message. So if we add in our else if and we say strlen string length of PM subject is greater than, let's just say 20 for right now, then we will add in an output saying the subject must be less than 20 characters. And then we add another one for the message, PM message, if it's greater than, let's just say, 1,000 characters. So we have to say output the message cannot be more than 1,000 characters, just to add a little bit of variety in our error messages. In terms of the actual database storage, 1,000 characters isn't too bad, and I don't think that many users will be sending messages of that length. So now that we've checked if the message is blank and if the fields are greater length than we want them to be, so what we will do is we can now say else, so we can say that, hey, everything is fine. We will assume that the PM underscore user is a valid user ID, and if it's not, it will end up sending a message to a bad ID, or in this case it would default to 0 since we're using an integer, so then the message would just never really be anywhere. So what we can say is if PM underscore subject is equal to nothing, then we want PM underscore subject to be equal to no subject. So if they don't feel like putting in the subject name, we can just default it to no subject. So now what we will have to do is say have the $send and do MySQL query or die MySQL error, and what we will do is we will say insert into, we can just call it PM, we will say we will have the value fields to from subject message and scene, and we and we'll actually say, oh my god, whatever, values of, hold on, let me just align this, and we can say for the first one the to field will be who it's going to, so this will be PM underscore user. The second one, we will add 2 single quotes, 2 double quotes, and 2 periods. So we can add in the session, I believe it's UID. Let me just check this really quick. Yes, it is session UID. So this is our from field, so we're saying it's from us. Then the subject, we want PM subject, PM underscore subject, and then the message is PM underscore message, add our semicolon, and then for seen we want 0. So meaning the message has not been seen by the other person. And assuming all of this goes well, we can output your message has been sent. I won't touch the PM page just yet, just making sure that's okay, because what we actually have to do is create the table for the messages. So what we have is the PM ID, the to ID, the from ID, the subject, the message, and the scene. So right now we have 6 columns that we need to make. So here we will have, this will be ID, this will be to, this will be from, this will be subject, this will be message, and this will be scene. Scene we can set as a tiny int, length of value 3, and then attributes will be unsigned. Message, we can throw this as a blob if we really need to. That way it'll just store all the text into a blob file. For subject, we will use varchar with a length of 20, so that way anything else will get truncated, and we can keep the subject pretty small in size. For to and from, we will use unsigned regular integers. We can default these to be 20, or 10 rather. Same thing with ID. This will be unsigned, and it will be the primary index, and we will also auto increment it. So if we hit save, we can go back, and here's our PM table with our structure. These are reserved keywords, so if MySQL does ever give you any errors, you can always just add in like to user, from user, etc., just so that way MySQL doesn't complain, but this shouldn't be an issue. So now if we go back here and we say the subject, we can say hello, and we can say hi there, how are you? If we send it, hopefully things will be good. Let's see. We have an error. So now we get to find out what the error actually is. So if we go back into here, first one thing we can check is to see if the single quotes match in between the commas. Here, here, here. Single quotes are all fine. So what we can always do is we can go back and check. We can always throw in the period double quote, and we can always see sometimes PHP doesn't like this. If we refresh the page to try and resend the data, we can still see that there is the same exact issue. Okay, so we actually can see that the error was a missing tilde just before the subject. As we can see, that had an issue. So if we go back here, we resend it, we can say your message has been sent. So if we go back to the database and we try to browse it, we have ID, then we have to, and we have from. So now we can see that it's to the user ID 2, from user ID 1, here's our subject, and then our message is a blob, which you can't actually visibly see in the database. So this will be the first part of our video. The second part, we will deal with having the inbox so we can actually see the messages that are being sent to us and also being able to reply to those. So I will see you in the next video.